everyone, welcome back to the blog. Today I am absolutely honored to have two very special people on the blog today, Chad and Fallon Erickson. So let's go check it out. Hello everyone, welcome back to the blog. I am beyond thrilled today to have two incredibly talented people with us today, Chad and Fallon Erickson of Maryville, Tennessee. So welcome you guys. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. So good to be with you.
Yes, we are so excited.
Well, I am so honored today. So to start off, tell people about yourselves for people who may not, have heard of y'all. Tell people about your family and your jobs and what y'all do.
Go ahead, Fallon.
All right. Well, we are associate pastors at the First Apostolic Church of Maryville, and we also have another campus in Sevierville and Pigeon Forge, and that happened this year. So we are really excited about that. We have three beautiful girls. Paris Lachey, she is 10. Windsor Kate is 5, and London Kinley is 3. So we have a little drama club here in our
They are adorable.
Thank you. Like a full-time ladies conference here at our house.
Exactly.
We're sad.
Poor thing. All right. So with both of y'all being very heavily involved in the music department in y'all's church, what gave y'all a love for music? Fallon, you're an awesome piano player. Chad, you lead the choir. Y'all are both super instrumental in your church music department. So what gave y'all a love for music?
Yeah. I was very involved in our public school music department for like anything from choir, chorale to drama club. And just, I always felt a call to the ministry. My parents pastored. And so I felt that calling there and didn't know where it was leading me. And just through high school and through musicals, we performed and of course a lot of choir stuff, just got to where that was kind of my life. And so then I went from there to University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and studied classical music. So that just kind of really got it down deep. And then when I went to IBC, I transferred to IBC and graduated IBC. It went more of a contemporary gospel feel. But that was where my love really started in music, was really public school when I was just a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I really knew from a super young age, like maybe age 5, I would listen to music like every night. Even the same artists that he listened to, Michael English and Stephen Chapman, which is crazy. But I would listen to them every night, and I was I realized at a young age that I was driven by music. That was my happy place. And so at age 13,
I think you just turned 14.
I became the music minister here at First Apostolic Church of Maryville.
Incredible.
So, it came out of a need. It was something that our church needed at that moment. And, it was a tough decision and that I had to make, that I was going to do hard things as a young person. But I am so glad that I stepped out and just been running ever since. But I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. So speaking of music, Chad, you have a brand new album out with incredible songs, and it's a phenomenal album. So tell us a little bit about that and where the album came from, maybe some inspirations behind the songs. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And thank you. It was kind of a long time coming. I recorded with IBC Praise when I was in Bible school, and West Tennessee Mass Choir, and a bunch of course with our choir at First Apostolic Church. We recorded a couple of albums. But this is really the first solo album. And really a lot of times when you're trying to figure out, okay, is it time to record? The bottom line is if you don't have the songs, you just kind of procrastinate. And that's what I did just year after year. It's like, I don't know, I got some favorite songs, but I got to find a songwriter. Well, just a little over a year ago, Fallon just took up with songwriting in an amazing way. And a lot of songwriters were bringing stuff, and you're like, but everything she brought me, she wrote for my voice. She knows my range, and so she put everything where I like to sing. And so as she would call me to the piano and say, "Listen to this one," she'd start playing through and singing through for me, and I'd be like, that sounds good, you know. And so
Wow.
we started compiling, and she can really tell you more about the songs that she wrote. She wrote at least 3. She had co-wrote with Gina Vera on a couple of them, but she can kind of tell you more of the inspiration maybe. But for me, it was when she started writing them, I started feeling that this is real. You know, this is something that we need to get out to the world, get out just in the public. And so we did that with a few of the songs. Surrender, Your Voice is Bigger, which is about to go into single in the radio play. Heartbeat was all her. We'll talk about those and I'll kind of go on. But talk about.
So Heartbeat is one that I wrote, and Sister Vera helped me. She wrote the second verse on it. But it is something that was wrote out of a need for, we were having a mission service, and one of our favorite quotes is, missions is the heartbeat of God. And so that's pretty much the basis of that song, and just, you know, taking the gospel into the whole world, you know. And so that song came from inspiration for missions, for that mission service. But then Surrender is a song that really sums up a season of our life that we went through. After we had Paris, we lost 3 babies. And so that was a really tough time in our ministry, and, you know, to keep on pushing, even though you're really just dying on the inside. And there was, you know, I'll just be real open with you. There was postpartum depression that went with that, losing 3 babies back to back. And I went through a really dark time during that. And yes, I was praying. I was doing all the things that we were both praying, and, you know, just pleading out to God to help us. But when I say that Surrender, God gave me that song from like the first word to the last word within like 5 minutes.
Wow.
I was.
That's one of my favorites. It's probably my favorites on the album. It just,
I mean,
ministry wise for sure.
Yeah. And it flowed from like the first word to the end. That was really the first song when I was like, okay, God. It was so quick that I'm like, you know, it's the Lord working
exactly.
through you.
It had to be from Him.
I
Exactly.
never wrote a song before, like in my life, much less saying, hey, you need to put this on your album. But the first verse 1 says, if brokenness is what you want, then here I am, Lord. You know, and that was something that I found myself praying, not just once a day, but several times a day during that season of coming through that postpartum depression. And I knew I wouldn't trade that time for anything now, because I now see where God was taking me.
Exactly. It made you stronger.
Yeah, to be able to relate through song. So Surrender is just one of those songs that it's, you know, it's a pretty deep song, but I was like, Chad, bring my iPad. He's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, just nobody talk, you know, and I'm like, you know, in there. So that was a really, I can really look back to that day and say that was like when I seen the season change for our ministry and everything. So we're, and then Your Voice is Bigger. Me and Gina Vera co-wrote that one together. And it is a fun, upbeat, like jamming, going down the road, windows down, you know.
Yeah, one of those fun songs. Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the times with songwriters, those songs, they come out of personal experiences. And I feel like that's what makes them relate to so many people, is because you're not writing about something that happened to somebody else or something that people can't relate to. You're writing something from your heart and something that you went through. So you're able to relate, that message relates to people. And so Fallon, you touched on this a little bit before, but tell people about your story with your anxiety and how you struggle with that, with playing in front of crowds. I myself had to go through that as well. I remember a time when I was it was about 10 or 11. And at the time I was one of the only people in the church besides my mom who could play, and I was still learning everything. And she had to go out of town, and it was like, you're going to do it. And I remember that fear, you know, and it's hard. And especially I feel as you get older, that fear gets even worse if you're starting out, you know, starting to minister to people, because you know what they're expecting, you know, and you know what they need, and you want to be able to minister to them, you know. So tell us your story and maybe what you would say to somebody else who's going through that.
Sure. Yeah. And this is something that started whenever I, you know, as long as I can remember. I just had a fear of being in crowds. And it really started, this is kind of crazy, I'll tell you, I had a big birthmark that went like here and it kind of covered over my eye. And so I felt like people were always looking at me. And, sometimes young people can be mean. I had a few people make fun of me. So I felt like it kind of all started there. And then it just turned into something that I think the devil was like, hey, I can use this to tear her down, And so that was something that the enemy, he really tried to use that to bring me down and to stop me from being up in front of people, whether it be at a conference or at our local church. But I'm so thankful that through a lot of prayer, and this helped me develop a prayer life at a young age, and my mother and my father believing in me and pushing me and seeing, I knew God had called me to music. Even before we met, I knew that was just what I would be doing. But, it was just hard to see the process that I was going to have to go through to get to that point. So a lot of times he'll show us the promise, but he won't show us the process.
Exactly.
We won't do it.
Exactly. That's true.
So, I just kept on fighting. I mean, there would be services. I would get like extremely nervous and anxious before altar because, I didn't know what songs we were going to do, especially when I was 14 and 15. I mean, I've passed out before doing church over it. I've passed out, and then my mom's like, hey, you're good, you're awake, the Lord's woke you up, you get up there and play, So I'm so thankful, though, that I did those hard things as a young person, because I really believe it's brought us to where, to where I am today. And so to anybody that's going through that, one thing that I've had to learn is I thought that was something I had conquered in my life. And then when all of those miscarriages happened and everything started happening with losing the babies, it kind of opened that door again. And so you just got to be wise to the devil and how he'll want to come back through and work in your life. So that was something that I really had to kind of deal with again in my later 20s. But I do have this one devotional that I have read through. It's called Jesus Calling. And this is something that I kept, just like with me, especially when I was going through that time of just losing the babies. And this is something that helped me along with prayer all day long. And, now it all makes sense. Once God started giving me those songs, whenever I would start feeling that way, I just would start writing about it. And I'm just like, whoa, if broken, because I'd pray to the Lord, if brokenness is what you want, here I am, Lord. It's like, okay, that could be a song, And so I really started turning that and in the devil's face, he wanted to use that to tear me down. So prayer and just keep on doing what you're doing. Don't forget what God called you to do. If he called you to do it, he's going to lead you through it.
Exactly.
And so,
Sure.
That's awesome. And I know, God has to have that purpose because he was preparing you at such a young age to go through things that you would have to go through when you were older, and so that's such an important message for us, looking down is what we go through now is definitely equipping us for what we may go through later. And he knows that. So, and tell us a little bit about your book, because you did write a piano book, instructional book. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So what this book is all about, it's called Transitions. And I think transitions are critical to a service. So that was something that I had to really work on as a beginner musician that got thrown into it. Is I could play the songs, but then what? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's all about that flow of worship. So the book kind of comes from the angle that as the lead keyboardist in your church, you are creating the atmosphere for worship, and you can really help your pastor, whatever his bottom line is in the message. I try my best not to leave that piano until he gets done praying for his message, and be intent on when does he want the music back up there, and just saying it, realizing that you're a critical role of, people coming to the altar and creating that perfect atmosphere for people to get the Holy Ghost. But then also I went through and I made all of these little boxes. And so what it does is it has every scenario. If you're going from the key of C to D flat, there's a chord pattern for that. If you're going from C to D, C to E flat, C to E, C to F, and then I go down and then make a box for the key of D flat. And then it has every scenario. So that way it can help out new musicians. If they're just starting out, they can, see, okay, I can use those 4 chords to get to the next key, jot it down on their lead sheet. And then there's also a CD in the back of it that have just some examples. And then there's like background chords and just a few different chord ideas too. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure it's helped many, many people. So, and then kind of going along the same lines of, we touched on this before as well, with both of y'all being leaders in your church. What would you say is the key to being a good, successful leader in the field of church or even outside the field of church? Because good leaders are something nowadays that we need desperately in church, out of church, anywhere. We need good leaders. So what would y'all say is the key to that?
I would say the love for people. I think a lot of, if you're not careful, especially, if a church hires in, which is obviously nothing wrong with that, but hires in a music director or a youth pastor or whatever, a lot of times it could be a job, and the love for people that's taken me. Of course, I was hired in 1999 as youth pastor. Back then we called them youth pastors. And got hired in as a youth pastor. And it just took me a while to realize that it wasn't a job, that it was a relationship building. It was a love for people that I was really doing. I was getting paid to have good relationships with people is really what it was. I mean, because, people are not going to follow you unless they know you love them. And that's just about it. It took me a while to realize that. It was something that maybe even 5 years before I really understood that, hey, these kids know if you love them, or this music department knows if you love them. Right. And in doing so, people want to follow somebody they love, and that they know, even more important, they know who loves them.
Right. Well, there's not really a class for that.
No, there's not.
No, it's all by years of training and learning. So, wow, that's awesome. So I'm interested to know, who are y'all's biggest inspirations in music and leadership, or both, or who are y'all's biggest inspirations?
Well, I would definitely have to say my mom and dad, brother and sister Carpenter. They're amazing.
Good people, yeah.
Amazing. I could write a whole book on them, their life, and everything that they've done to bring the church, our organization, the whole apostolic movement to really where it's at. And being first generation apostolic is just an incredible testimony. But people may find this like really strange for me to say, but they're probably my biggest musical inspiration, because I can remember when we were just in a little house having church here in Maryville, that my mom would spend, like, she really can't sing. I mean, she could read notes. She'd really have to work on it. I can remember her spending 7 and 8 hours perfecting a choir song to be able to teach it to a choir of maybe 10 people. And that impressed me so much as a young child, that God is worthy of our very best, even if we don't have a 100-voice choir or a 50-voice choir. I can remember her working with what God had given her. And, rolling the clock forward, 30 years, it's like, God gave her everything that she could ever dream of. She has 3 children that are all involved in music, and then 2 son-in-laws. God He does it right, but it goes back to our motive. And when God sees that your motive is right, He'll open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you don't even have room enough to contain it. So just watching her do that is what really inspired me as a 14-year-old to know, if my mom could do that and she didn't even have any musical training. I mean, whenever I stepped in at 14 to be the music minister, we had a 70-voice choir. We had a full brass section. We had live specials and a praise team. And we had all this with somebody that really didn't even, play the piano or anything at all. She just simply, like Chad said earlier, had a love for people. And I can remember my dad, when we, just had a few in the church, we would have 7 kids in our Christmas musical, and he would run the little coffee tin spotlight thing. My mom would cue dad, here he is at the church, he's over there.
Wow.
So, it's those times that that's what God sees that. And that inspired
Exactly.
me. That
Yeah.
inspired me so much to, hey, you know what? No, I've had to work. Whenever I'm up there playing the piano, I'm not one of those musicians that, you just see musicians, they sit down and they just like, it was just natural. They're
Yeah.
born that way. I was not born that way. Sister Susan Triplett, creator of pianobyear.com, she came to my parents when I was 10 and was like, look, y'all are wasting your money. Fallon is not even paying attention. And my parents just kept believing in me. So I would have to say they're my greatest musical and leadership inspiration.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'll be quick. Of course, mine is with hers, but somebody who I just adore is Dr. Lyndall Anderson. Of course, music, Dean of music. For many ways, a lot of the ways that even what she said, of course, he has his doctorate and he's incredible. He has degrees in music but even watching him, he's not a showman at all. Nothing was ever about himself at IBC. I was there when his first year when he came, and just the relationship we built, and just watching him pour himself into the students, and he totally got gratification off of what his students did, which I thought was the most amazing thing in the world. It was not about him holding the mic, it's not about him playing or him anything. Of course, he doesn't even sing, but he's not a performer, other than now he's now a concert pianist and what have you. But as far as he's not somebody that has to have his name in lights. However, he's like a grandfather with the grandchildren when it comes to whatever they do, his kids are the best. He just is so proud of them. That put into me the idea of pouring myself into the next generation and living through the next generation. Which would be greater than our generation.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, both of you teach, you teach piano, I know, at the academy, and many other things, and then you teach choir and all that kind of stuff. So what is an important value you think to have as a teacher? And y'all kind of touched on this too earlier, is loving your students, so just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think one really important value is to not make it all about music. Is that we have got to bring the spiritual side into what we're doing in music, because I do believe that music can be a place that the devil would like to work in a prideful way. And so if we're raising up a generation that it's all about them, we're not doing our job. So we really try to focus on spirituality, being in the prayer room, beware of people that want to play and don't want to pray. So we really, we're really big sticklers about, living in reality of, is somebody up here for the show, or, are they up here for the audience of one? And so there's red flags, there are big things, but I think that is big, is promoting spirituality greater than their musicianship. And that's a tough thing to do when you want to have the greatest band and the greatest choir, and we're on TV every day of the week. We have a live webcast. That can be a tough thing, but it's not all about that. And I think that's something that we've learned throughout the years. And then, I guess the next thing would just be loyalty to your pastor. That's a big thing, is we're on the same page with Pastor Carpenter of what his goal is for that service. And we are there just simply to create the atmosphere for the word to be brought forth. And if the choir, if it ends in a shout down, it ends in a shout down, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get people's hearts prepared for the word.
Exactly. So you touched on this, our next to last question, you touched on this, is nowadays, to walk into a church where whenever you walk in, if you're late, if you're running late, or even before you get there, if you walk in and if you can feel the presence of God, that is something that people crave nowadays, and it's hard to find, And so give people the mindset behind what's the difference between really creating that atmosphere of worship, and for that audience of one, than just being up there just to do it or to put on a show. So talk a little bit about that.
I would think, if you're alone and you're performing, then it's more of a show to me. If you get the whole audience involved in the worship, then you have a performance Of course, what she just said, for an audience of one. And that's what we try to. A lot of times people, they'll kind of throw off, and I totally understand what they're saying. They'll talk about, this is not a performance, but it is. I mean, bottom line is, it is a performance. For the King. Mm-hmm. And I think if everybody would realize that, and that's where, and sometimes you've got to really preach that to your church, because that's not something that every church understands. A lot of times, we grew up with a song leader, and what a song leader did is he told you a page number, and we all just sang the same songbook song together. And there wasn't a lot of worship. We just kind of all follow through the song, and we clap at the end and what have you, where today, like you're talking about, this feeling of worship has to come with a church that understands that we're not here to hear this worship team. We're here to join with this worship team. And that's what we try so hard to do in Maryville. And of course, anywhere we go to lead worship is to get them engaged to where it's not a performance to them. It's a combined performance to the King.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah, I've been there. I've been to the church, and it's awesome. The atmosphere that y'all create, that when it just falls, it's incredible. So that was the last of the deep questions. I believe we have one more at the end. So I'm going to get into the speed round, which these are just a little bit faster questions. And so, what is one quote that you guys love, that you've heard?
Oh goodness. Okay, so this is supposed to be quick.
Yes, go fast.
You're good.
The devil only fights who he fears.
That's good. That's
Something
good.
always helped me.
Yeah. What is the best advice that you've ever been given?
I think to put the family first. Yeah. I think with any artist or minister, the temptation, I guess, would be that God deserves the best, which he does. Mm-hmm. And so therefore all my time has to go towards that, and nothing can replace family. I mean, nothing.
That's true.
Nothing. So family first.
That's important. All right. What is one thing you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Simply that, and we already kind of hit this too, but it is all for the audience of one. And when you stop trying to impress other people, it's going to affect everything that you do, from the way you think you have to dress to the way you think you have to preach, or the way you have to sing, or the way you have to walk, or how you wear your hat, or what, it just, there's so many things. I remember growing up, to be a musician, you got to look like this and have your hair like this, or have this. And once you finally figure out that, oh my goodness, it's not even about those people and them thinking that I'm somebody or something, it all changes. And I wish if I would have known that as a young person, there's a lot of dumb stuff that I tried to be and act like that I wouldn't have had to act like.
He preached last week at a music conference. Use the talent God gave you. Don't try to, a lot of times music is about imitating, maybe a riff or something that we've heard. But, just understanding, just be who you are, and be comfortable in that. And as long as our motives are in check, everything else will fall into place. If it's truly about the audience of one, nothing else.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So is there something on the bucket list for you guys to do that y'all want to do one day?
Yes, this is so crazy. Okay, we want to fly to California.
Yeah.
And then we want to rent, those 1-800 rent RV. One of those.
We want to go to all the national parks and just make a 2-week nothing but California.
That sounds awesome and relaxing, and you have a ton of things to do. That's for sure. All right, so this may be a little bit different answer. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Wow, I want to go to Singapore, but I travel quite a bit. So I travel worldwide, travel a bit international. But I want to bring Fallon. I've been to Dubai, and it's the most amazing city. And I want to bring her. That's my next year thing. I want to bring her to Dubai. Make a business trip out of it. It's going to be awesome.
All right. So what are you guys most grateful for?
The truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just the way that, and I know he can speak for how his father presented it to him, but the way that my dad presented the truth and holiness in just such a beautiful way. you know, growing up in a preacher's home, sometimes I've seen other situations and it's not turned out so great. But they modeled a life that I couldn't dream of doing anything else than being at the church.
Exactly.
You know, and the truth was just presented in such a beautiful way that, you know, I want to do more. You know, I really feel like as each generation progresses, we should do more for God and not less. So I'm thankful for the truth and how it was presented, and I love it.
That's awesome. Okay, so the last question that I have for y'all today is, what advice would you give to a young person or a young couple who feels that God has called them into ministry? What advice would you give them?
I feel this is something that we caught on to very early in our marriage, intentional giving. And I say intentional in that we talked about it, we planned for it, sometimes budgeted for it, sometimes went beyond our budget for it. But it was something that to receive the favor of God, and sadly, Christian television has really blown it so far out of scale and made people even have a bad taste in their mouth for it. But the sad thing is they're onto something that they have just learned how to pocket the change from it. But the truth of the matter is, when you're an intentional giver, God puts favor in your life. And it could be favor in a multitude, not just getting stuff back because you gave, but it could be boosting your ministry and boosting your walk with Him, and just things that if you're going to be a preacher, a singer, or a musician, I'm sure a lot of people say, make sure you practice and take lessons and what have you. But beyond that is give to the kingdom of God. And you'll find yourself blessed in so many ways beyond just music or just ministry. It'll bless you in every aspect of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. We are, both of us are second generation apostolic, and we come from homes. His parents are sacrificial givers. My parents are. And so, the word says that you're cursed with a curse, if you don't. But then what about, generational, we talk about generational curses, but what about generational blessings? Exactly. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And I mean, missions, obviously we need to give what belongs to God in our tithe and offering. But when you open up that missions giving, for us, when we did that as a young couple, and we just started seeing God move in our lives in ways that
open doors that would have never been opened.
He's done so much for us, we can't even tell it all, and so we just you cannot give the Lord, and we look for the next opportunity to, what can we do next,
Well, and God honors your sacrifice and y'all's dedication. He sees all that, and so He honors it. So, but that's awesome. That's so good to hear. Well, thank you guys so much for this opportunity. It was awesome. I'm sure this is going to minister to a lot of people that watch it. And so where can they find your album and your book and the church projects and stuff like that? Where can they find that?
My album can be ordered. It'll be on iTunes starting November 1st. But if they want to order the CD, they go to chadjerickson.com and they can get that. That's the personal website. And then we also have factv.org, which is the First Apostolic Church. That's our church website. There's a store on there where they can get our church albums. They get her transition book, or they could really order the CD also off that same website.
Split tracks. We're also going to be putting all his soundtracks on as well for people that would like to sing them in their local churches, and chord charts and everything. So we'll have all the products that go with that up very shortly.
Well, that's awesome. And I'll leave a link down in the post that people can go check them out and get their things. Well, thank you once again, guys. It was a privilege and an honor. And thank you. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right, that was it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to subscribe to my blog, click right over there for more interviews. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, click right down below and make sure to hit the big thumbs up button. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.